Have you ever wanted something so intensely that you could feel it in your chest like a constant pressure? Not like a distant dream, not like a vague aspiration, but like a physical urgency, almost painful, that accompanied you when you woke up, throughout the day, when you went to bed. That feeling that something is missing, and until you have it, something inside you will remain incomplete. Maybe it was the love of a specific person. Maybe it was the recognition you feel you deserve, and that never comes. Maybe it was financial stability you see in others, that in your own life always seems to be one step beyond your reach, or simply that inner peace you've been chasing for months without finding it, like someone running after their own shadow without realizing they can never catch it that way. And the curious thing, what nobody explained to you, is that the harder you squeezed, the more it slipped away. The more you needed what you desired, the further it seemed. The more you made it the center of everything, the more that everything crumbled around you. That's not a coincidence, that's not bad luck. It's one of the oldest and least understood laws of human existence. And today we're going to talk about it. Because there is a paradox at the heart of all desire. What you pursue with desperation recedes. What you receive with calm arrives. And learning to live from that second posture is not weakness or resignation. It is one of the most radical forms of power that exists. Before we continue, comment the word calm if you've ever felt that the more you chase something, the further it moves from you. Write it below because this is the first step towards stopping living in anxiety and starting to reclaim your inner peace. And if this kind of conversation nourishes you, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs it too. Let's begin. 1. The problem isn't what you desire. It's how you desire it. There is an enormous difference between wanting something and desperately needing it, and that difference changes everything. When you want something from a place of clarity, from the quiet conviction that this thing makes sense in your life, your energy is clean, focused, fertile. You act with intention. You make decisions with firmness. You move in the right direction without losing your balance. But when you desperately need something, when your entire well-being, your self-esteem, your sense that life is worth living depends on getting what you're seeking, the energy changes completely. You are no longer someone who chooses. You are someone who begs. And even if that begging is silent, even if no one sees it, it is felt in every decision you make, in every word you say, in every move you make from the fear of not getting it. Think of it this way. Imagine you urgently need a job and you go to an interview from a place of desperation, of fear, of I have to get this or I don't know what I'm going to do. That energy, even if you try to hide it, seeps through. In how you speak, in how you listen, in the questions you ask, or don't dare to ask, in the rigidity with which you present yourself, because any sign of rejection feels like a catastrophe. Now imagine going to that same interview having resolved the fear first. Not the financial situation, but the fear. Having internally decided that you are someone who can handle whatever comes. The energy is different, the presence is different, and the result, almost always, is too. The Stoic philosophers understood this more than 2,000 years ago with a clarity that is still uncomfortable today. Marcus Aurelius, who governed the most powerful empire in history and yet wrote about his own weaknesses with a disarming honesty, said that suffering is not born from circumstances. It is born from the judgment we make about them, from the story we tell ourselves about what it means not to have what we want. And that story most of the time sounds like this: without this, I am not enough. Without this, my life is not complete. Without this, I cannot be happy. Pause on that phrase for a moment. Without this, I cannot be happy. How many decisions have you made from that place? How many relationships have you forced? How many opportunities have you pursued with a desperation that drove them away? How many versions of yourself have you betrayed trying to fit into the mold you believed would finally give you what you were looking for? Desire is not the problem. Desire is the engine of life. But desperate desire, the desire that becomes identity, the desire that says I am someone incomplete until this arrives, that desire doesn't bring you closer to anything. It chains you to the exact place where you are, like someone trying to push a door that opens inward. The harder they push, the more it closes, and the solution isn't to push harder, it's to change direction. The first transformation you need is not external, it is internal. It is not getting what you want, it is changing the way you want it. 2. What the mind grips breaks. Imagine you have a small bird in your hands. If you let it go, it might fly away. If you squeeze it tight out of fear of losing it, you suffocate it. And the fear of losing it becomes exactly what kills it. Relationships work this way. Opportunities work this way. Self-confidence works this way. There are people who have destroyed the most valuable things they had precisely by holding on too tightly, who lost the friendship they cherished most by becoming suffocating in their need for certainty, who sabotaged their own success out of the panic that the possibility of failure generated, who drifted away from their own intuition by trying to control every step of the path with an impossible precision. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the most influential thinkers in history, understood this from the most extreme position imaginable. Without physical freedom, without possessions, without power over almost anything in his outer life, he discovered something no one could take from him: the freedom to choose how to respond to what happened to him. And from that, he built an entire philosophy. His central teaching was simple and brutal at the same time. There are things that depend on you and things that don't. And the greatest source of human suffering is spending energy in the wrong direction, trying to control what you cannot control and ignoring the only thing you can: your response, your attitude, your presence. When you try to control the outcome, you miss the process. When you become obsessed with the destination, you don't see the path. And the path is the only real thing you have. The destination is always a promise. The path is where you actually live. Releasing control doesn't mean abandoning direction. It means stopping wasting energy on the outcome and starting to invest it in the action. It means trusting that if you do what depends on you with excellence and consistency, life will find a way to respond. Not always in the way you expected, but almost always in the way you needed. 3. The mistake of placing your peace in the future. There is a mental trap that almost all of us fall into at some point in life. It's called the when syndrome. When I land that job, I'll be at peace. When that person loves me the way I deserve, I'll be happy. When I have enough money, I'll be able to enjoy life. When that moment comes, everything will make sense. And the trap isn't in wanting those things. It's that while you wait for them, you stop living what you already have. You put your peace on hold. You suspend your capacity to be well until something external gives you permission to be. And the cruelest part of that trap is that when what you were waiting for finally arrives, when that when is fulfilled, the relief lasts very little. Because the mind that learned to live in waiting mode doesn't know how to be in present mode. It quickly finds the next when, the next threshold to cross before finally being able to rest. It's a horizon that moves with you, always at the same distance, always promising that behind it lies what you're looking for. You know people like this. Maybe you are that person in some aspects of your life, the one who works non-stop telling themselves that when they reach a certain level, they'll be able to slow down. And when they reach that level, they set the next one. The one who postpones vacations, rest, celebration, love, waiting for the perfect moment that never quite arrives. The one who lives so focused on tomorrow that today passes at a speed they can't even perceive. Seneca saw this with an almost impatient clarity. He wrote that men spend their entire lives preparing to live, preparing, not living. And when the moment to do so finally arrives, there is no time left. That phrase, written 2,000 years ago, describes with surgical precision the lives of millions of people today. The question is not what you need to be happy. The question is why you can't be happy now with what you already have, in the place you already are, being who you already are. Not as a final destination, but as a starting point. Because the person who waits to be complete before starting to live never starts. And the person who decides to live as complete from now and from here, from this, that person builds from a foundation that depends on no one but themselves. Peace is not a reward. It is a decision. One you can make right now before anything changes on the outside. And making that decision doesn't close the doors to growth. It throws them wide open. Because someone who acts from fullness acts differently from someone who acts from lack. And that difference in origin produces results that no effort from desperation could ever replicate. Before I reveal the next insight, if you've made it this far and you're taking your well-being seriously, write in the comments, "I love these videos." That way I'll know who is truly committed to a long and full life. And if you haven't yet, make sure to like the video, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any future content. 4. The day I stopped chasing and things started arriving. There is a pattern that repeats itself in the stories of people who achieved extraordinary things, and it's almost never the one you'd imagine. It's not relentless effort. It's not total obsession. It's not sacrificing everything else on the altar of a single goal. The real pattern, the one that appears again and again when you dig deep enough, is this. At some point, they stopped desperately needing the result. They kept working with the same dedication, or more. But something changed in their relationship with the outcome. They released it without abandoning it. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi concentration camps, and from that extreme experience built one of the most profound psychologies of the 20th century. And what he found, in the darkest place a human being can pass through, was this: success and happiness are not pursued, they are found, and they are always a consequence of something, a consequence of giving yourself to something greater than your own desire to have them. When you focus on purpose, on contribution, on the excellence of the process, the result comes as a side effect, not always in the form you expected, not always in the moment you calculated, but it comes because the energy that used to drain away into anxiety about the result now stays fully in the action. Think of it in simple terms. When you cook thinking only about whether the dish will turn out well, whether the guests will approve, whether it's up to expectations, that thought divides your attention. But when you cook with presence, about feeling the ingredients, adjusting the heat, enjoying the process, the dish almost always turns out better, because all your energy was there. Life works with that same logic. What you do with presence has a different quality from what you do from anxiety, and that quality is what attracts results that anxiety could never produce. 5. The identity that keeps you trapped. There is something nobody wants to say out loud, but that needs to be heard. Many people don't achieve what they say they want because, at a deeper level, their identity is built around not having it. It's not a character flaw, it's not conscious self-sabotage. It's simply that the human mind organizes itself around what it knows. And if you've spent years being the person who struggles, who waits, who is about to arrive but not quite yet, that identity becomes familiar, almost comforting in its discomfort, because at least it's known. Changing doesn't only mean getting what you want, it means ceasing to be who you have been. And that, even if it sounds liberating in theory, in practice generates a resistance that most people underestimate. The Stoics spoke of this in their own way. Virtue, they said, is not something you have. It is something you practice. You are not virtuous because one day you decided to be. You are virtuous because every day you choose to act from that virtue, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching, even when doing the opposite would be easier. Identity works the same way. You don't become the person who can receive what they desire simply by desiring it. You become that person by acting as that person, making decisions as that person, choosing the response that person would choose, even if it doesn't yet feel completely your own. Ask yourself honestly, who would I be if I already had what I'm looking for? How would that person behave? What would they decide? How would they relate to themselves? And then start being that person today, not as performance, as practice, as a conscious decision to inhabit the future before it arrives. Because life doesn't wait for you to become who you want to be before giving you what you're looking for. It gives you what you already are. 6. The noise of comparisons. There is a form of suffering that has become endemic in the modern world, one that didn't exist with the same virulence in earlier eras because the conditions for it weren't in place. It's called permanent comparison. Before, you compared your life to that of the few people you knew closely, with neighbors, family members, colleagues, a limited circle that left room to find your own rhythm without too much external noise. Today, you compare yourself to millions of people simultaneously, to the most filtered, most edited, most luminous version of their lives. You see the success without seeing the process. You see the achievement without seeing the price. You see the arrival without seeing the years of journey. And that constant comparison generates a feeling of permanent lag that is one of the most effective ways to paralyze yourself that exists. Marcus Aurelius, who literally governed the known world and could have compared his power to that of any other human being of his era, chose to compare himself only to himself. His private writings, the ones he never thought anyone would read, are a continuous dialogue between who he was yesterday and who he wanted to be tomorrow. No external references, no rankings, no one else's gaze. That is the useful comparison, the only one that generates real movement instead of paralysis. Are you better today than yesterday? Did you make a decision more aligned with who you want to be? Did you learn something, correct something, grow something? Flowers don't look to see if other flowers bloomed before them. They bloom in their time, in their season, in their form. Not because they don't care about blooming, but because the only way to truly bloom is from the inside out, not from the urgency to prove something to someone. Disconnect from the noise, not literally if that's not possible, but internally. Build a distance between what you see and what you feel. Train the ability to observe others' lives without turning them into the mirror by which you measure your own. Your rhythm is your rhythm, and from that rhythm, with consistency and presence, things that last are built. 7. Gratitude, not as forced positivity, but as training the gaze. There is a version of gratitude that doesn't work, the superficial version, the one that says, you should be grateful, as if it were a moral obligation, as if not being grateful were a character flaw. That version of gratitude is forced, artificial, and in practice generates more resistance than peace. It's like telling someone who is hungry to simply stop being hungry. It doesn't work because it ignores what's underneath. The gratitude that transforms is different. It is not an attitude you adopt because you should. It is a training of perception. It is changing the lens through which you observe your own life. It is a practice that builds over time and with consistency a different way of being in the world. The human mind has a natural inclination toward the negative, not because we are bad people, but because evolutionarily that bias kept us alive. The brain that detects dangers and problems survives better than the one that only sees the good. But that same mechanism in the modern world, without the physical dangers that justified it, becomes a machine for amplifying what is missing, what hurts, what could go wrong. There is a thought experiment I find revealing. Imagine you have 90 things going well in your life and 10 that aren't as you'd like. Which ones get your attention? Most people almost automatically dwell on the 10. They ruminate on them. They analyze them. They turn them into the center of gravity of their emotional state. Meanwhile, the 90 pass completely unnoticed, as if they didn't exist, as if they didn't count. Conscious gratitude doesn't deny the 10 that are failing. It acknowledges them, but it also chooses to see with equal clarity the 90 that are working. Conscious and genuine gratitude counteracts negative bias. It doesn't deny what is difficult. It doesn't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. It simply trains the brain to also detect what is there, what is working, what is already present, what already exists. And this isn't just philosophy, it's biology. Research in neuroscience has shown that a regular practice of gratitude activates brain circuits associated with well-being, improves sleep quality, strengthens the immune system, and improves decision-making capacity. The grateful brain literally functions better. But beyond the science, there is something deeper. When you train your gaze to see what you already have, to recognize the value of the ordinary, to notice the small moments that normally pass unnoticed, something changes in how you relate to the world. You stop living in scarcity mode. You start living in abundance mode, not because your circumstances have changed, but because the way you perceive them has. And from that place of perceived abundance, your actions have a different quality. Your presence changes. Your energy changes. The people around you feel it even if they can't name it. And life, which responds to energy more than to words, begins to respond differently. It is not magic, it is consequence. It is the effect of months of training your gaze in a direction different from where the natural fear of the mind wanted to take it. 8. Forgiveness as liberation, not as generosity. There is something that blocks more flow in people's lives than almost anything else, and we rarely recognize it by its name. Resentment. Not passing anger, which is natural and necessary, but settled resentment, the kind that has lived in the body for months or years as a tension we've forgotten the origin of, yet which is still there, coloring every experience, draining energy that could go elsewhere, keeping us bound to moments that have already passed, but which internally we keep living as if they were happening now. Resentment toward another person, toward a situation, toward life itself, or perhaps the most common and least spoken of, toward oneself. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood words in existence. Many people don't forgive because they believe forgiveness means saying that what happened was okay, that what was done to you was acceptable, that whoever hurt you deserves to be absolved. But forgiveness is none of those things. Forgiveness is simply choosing to stop carrying something that belongs to you, not to the one who hurt you. It is choosing your own lightness over the need to keep the pain alive as a form of protection or justice. When you forgive, you don't free the one who hurt you. You free yourself. You stop spending vital energy keeping alive a flame that only burns you. And that energy, recovered, can go somewhere else. It can build something, it can create something. It can open something that resentment had kept closed. Self-forgiveness works the same way, with the added difficulty that we struggle to recognize we need it. We are our harshest judges. We carry the weight of mistakes that others long ago forgot. We demand of ourselves a perfection we would never demand of anyone else. And that self-demand without compassion doesn't make us better. It makes us more rigid, more fearful, more paralyzed. Let go, not because it doesn't matter, but because your life matters too much to keep spending it on what can no longer be changed. 9. Obstacles as information, not as verdict. When something doesn't go as expected, the first question the anxious mind asks is, why is this happening to me? And that question, though understandable, is a trap, because it assumes the obstacle is a personal attack, a signal that something is fundamentally wrong with you or your path. And from that interpretation, the natural response is to withdraw, give up, or fall into a spiral of self-criticism that doesn't lead anywhere either. The Stoics proposed a different question, not why is this happening to me, but what is this happening for? Not in a naive sense that the universe has a perfect master plan for each of us, but in the most practical sense possible. What information is this situation giving me? What is it asking me to change, to learn, to adjust? Marcus Aurelius had a concept he called the obstacle as path, the idea that the resistance you encounter on the outside is not there to stop you, but to reveal something you needed to know about yourself, about your approach, about the path you are choosing. A tree that grows in a place exposed to the wind develops deeper roots than one that grows sheltered, not because the wind is kind, but because the resistance forces it to go deeper, to anchor itself with a strength it would never have needed to develop without the wind. Obstacles do the same. They force you to go deeper, to develop resources you didn't know you had, to find paths that the comfort of immediate success would never have shown you. This doesn't mean you should celebrate suffering. It means that suffering, when traversed with presence rather than resistance, has something to teach. And whoever learns that lesson comes out the other side with a capacity they didn't have before, one that no one else can take from them, because it didn't come from favorable circumstances. It came from having traversed the unfavorable ones and chosen, in that process, who they wanted to be. 10. The silence of true goals. There is a mistake almost everyone makes when pursuing something important, and it is talking about it too much. There is a satisfaction in telling others what you're going to do, in sharing the project, the goal, the dream, in receiving approval, enthusiasm, support from others. And that satisfaction is real. The problem is that the brain does not distinguish between the satisfaction of talking about the achievement and the satisfaction of achieving it. When you receive that anticipatory validation, something in you relaxes as if it had already happened. And that silent relaxation drains fuel from the actual action. This isn't superstition. There are studies that support it. When you keep your goals private, the tension between where you are and where you want to be remains active. And that tension, uncomfortable as it is available energy to move you. But there is something even deeper. When you share your intentions before fulfilling them, you open the door to others' opinions. And others' opinions, even the well-intentioned ones, are always someone else's filter over something that is yours, over something that was born inside you with its own logic, its own timing, its own way of developing. There are people who abandoned the best projects of their lives simply because someone whose opinion they valued raised a doubt they couldn't answer. Not because the project was bad, but because it was still tender, still forming, and premature exposure withered it before it could take root. Build first, show later. Let the results speak before the intentions. And when what you've built is already solid, already able to stand on its own, no longer needing your protection to survive, then share it with the generosity of someone giving something finished, not with the anxiety of someone seeking validation to continue. The most powerful things grow in silence, like roots, like bones, like true conviction. 11. Trusting without guarantees. Real trust, the kind worth something, is not the kind that appears when everything is going well. That is not trust. That is comfort. Real trust is the kind that chooses to remain when the outlook is uncertain, when results haven't arrived yet, when the voice of fear says maybe this time it won't work, maybe you're wrong, maybe it would be safer to stop. And that is exactly where most people stop, not for lack of ability, not for lack of talent, but for lack of tolerance for uncertainty, because we live in a culture that has normalized the need for certainty before acting. That says, in order to commit, you must know in advance that it will work out. That security is a prerequisite for movement. But security does not precede action. It is born from it. It is built in movement, not before. Every step you take from uncertainty and survive, every moment when the ground beneath your feet proved more solid than it seemed, every time fear said you can't and you did it anyway, that builds trust, not the promise that it will turn out well. The evidence that you can handle whatever comes. There is a subtle but crucial difference between optimism and trust. Optimism says everything is going to work out. Trust says, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm going to be able to handle it. Optimism depends on results. Trust doesn't. And that's why optimism abandons you in the difficult moments, exactly when you need it most, while trust is precisely what activates in those moments. It is the muscle you've been training every time you chose to keep going when stopping would have been easier. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no guarantee of anything. There was no possible certainty in his situation. And yet, from that impossibility, he built an entire philosophy based on inner freedom, on the capacity to choose the response even when you cannot choose the circumstances. His freedom didn't depend on the world changing. It depended on him choosing how to relate to a world he couldn't change. That is the trust that transforms. Not the kind that says I'm certain it will work out. The kind that says I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I know I can be present in whatever happens. And that is enough to take the next step. Don't ask life for guarantees. Life doesn't give them. Ask yourself for the willingness to walk without them. That is all the path needs from you. The rest, the direction, the opportunities, the encounters, the unexpected turns that turn out to be exactly what you needed, even if you didn't know it. All of that arrives when you move, never when you wait for the terrain to be perfect before taking the first step. 12. Living in the now without escaping the later. There is a misinterpretation of the concept of living in the present that is worth clarifying. Living in the present doesn't mean ignoring the future. It doesn't mean abandoning planning, vision, or a sense of direction. It means something more subtle and more powerful. It means that while you act toward the future, you do so with your feet on the ground of the now, with your mind present in what you are doing at this moment, without dividing your attention between what you're doing and the anxiety over whether it will work. The mind that constantly escapes to the future cannot be fully anywhere. It is halfway here, halfway in a tomorrow that doesn't yet exist, and in that division, it loses the ability to do well what it has in its hands right now. And it is precisely that ability to be completely present in what you do that determines the quality of what you produce. A musician who is thinking about whether the audience will applaud while playing cannot play with the depth of the musician who is completely inside the music. A writer who is obsessed with whether the book will be published while writing cannot write with the same freedom as one who writes simply to write, to find the exact word for the pleasure of the process itself. Presence is not a spiritual luxury, it is a practical advantage. Things done with presence have a different quality, and that quality is what makes the difference between the mediocre and the extraordinary, between what passes unnoticed and what leaves a mark. Come back here, come back to this, come back to what you have in your hands right now, not because the future doesn't matter, but because the future is built with the quality of the now. 13. Receiving without clinging. The last piece of all this, and perhaps the most difficult, is learning to receive what comes without immediately gripping it out of fear of losing it. Because there are people who spend years chasing something, who finally achieve it, and in the moment it arrives, instead of receiving it with the lightness that made it possible, they begin clinging to it with the same desperation with which they previously pursued it. And that clinging destroys what openness had created. The love that arrived when you stopped searching for it urgently can be lost if you begin to control every aspect of it. Out of fear, it will leave. The opportunity that appeared when you stopped forcing it can close if you embrace it with so much tension it can't breathe. The peace you found when you stopped running can disappear the moment you become obsessed with maintaining it. Marcus Aurelius wrote it in 3 words that summarize everything. Receive without arrogance, release without resistance. Receive what comes with gratitude and presence, without immediately turning it into something you have to protect, defend, preserve at any cost. And when it goes, because everything passes, let it go with the same lightness with which it came. That is not indifference, it is emotional maturity. It is having understood that nothing in life is permanent and that peace cannot depend on things staying forever. Life flows, and whoever learns to flow with it, whoever develops the capacity to be present in what arrives without being paralyzed by resistance to what leaves, that person experiences something very few know, the lightness of being alive without the constant weight of what might be lost. And there is something more. When you learn to receive without clinging, life begins to give more generously, not because you are more deserving, but because what arrives in open hands can stay. What arrives in closed hands, clenched, tense with fear, is crushed or slips out through the edges. Openness is not vulnerability. It is the necessary condition for anything good to enter and stay for as long as it needs to stay. That is the freedom the Stoics sought. Not the absence of desire, but the ability to desire without being enslaved to the result, to act without being enslaved to fear, to live without being enslaved to a time that is not this one. 14. The step that changes everything. If you had to do just one thing differently after everything we've discussed today, just one, I would tell you it's this: stop running for a moment, just a moment, not forever, not as renunciation, just long enough to see where you're running from, to ask yourself whether that speed comes from clarity or from fear, to distinguish between movement that brings you closer to something and movement that only takes you away from the discomfort of being still, because there is an enormous difference between acting from fullness and reacting from urgency, between moving because you know where you're going and moving because you can't tolerate not moving. And that difference, invisible from the outside, determines almost everything from the inside. There are people who have been running for years, and if you ask them where to, they can't answer you clearly. They are busy, yes. They are active, yes. But beneath all that activity, there is an uncomfortable truth they don't want to face. Speed is sometimes a way of escaping the questions that are frightening. What do I really want? Am I living the life I chose, or the one expected of me? Am I happy? Simple questions that can shake everything when asked from true silence. Stopping is not going backward. Stopping is sometimes the most courageous movement that exists. It is having the honesty to look inward before continuing outward. It is recognizing that no external achievement can compensate for the emptiness that is born when you are not aligned with who you truly are. The peace you are looking for is not in the next achievement. It is available now, not as a substitute for achievement, as a starting point toward it, because the best things that can come into your life don't come to those who desperately need them. They come to those who are already well, who are already enough, who already have something real to offer in the exchange with life. Not because the universe is capricious or unfair, but because the person who is already well makes better decisions, has more clarity, acts from strength instead of from fear, sees opportunities that the anxious mind cannot see because it is too busy managing panic. And that difference in origin produces radically different results. So start there, with being well now, with deciding that this moment, exactly this one, with everything that is missing and everything that hurts and everything that hasn't arrived yet, is enough to begin. To take the next step, to be already who you want to be. You don't need to resolve everything first. You don't need to have the answers. You don't need to wait until the circumstances are perfect, because they never are. You simply need to take the next step from where you are, with what you have being who you already are. And then the next, and the next after that. The future you are seeking is not waiting for you to reach it. It is waiting for you to stop running so it can find you. Rest, breathe, and trust. If you've made it this far, something in you resonated with all of this. Write below just one thing you decide to let go of today. Not for me, for yourself. Because putting it into words is the first act of liberation. And if this video gave you something, share it with someone who also needs to hear it, because sometimes the right word at the right moment changes everything. See you in the next video. Keep building.